Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the podcast in a car episode. We're recording in Australia a few days after the giant wiki wedding, where our hosts have been gracious to invite us down to Australia, the south coast. This is the wedding of Yuanchosaan and ScatheMote.
Wow, you did that pronunciation really well.
Did I?
Yes.
Podcast powered by car.
Podcast powered by car. So in the car is BlueHighwind here, of course, and our wedding people, and 8-Bit.
8-Bit, I drive this Honda CRV. It's a beaut.
And SomeColorMage.
Yep, we introduced these people to a bunch of Australian cuisine and then ended it with Taco Bell for some reason.
Yes. There was discussion of doing a whole podcast recording down here, but, we decided to go spend that time cooking and hiking.
And we had too much fun.
Yes, and forgetting our podcast mic at home anyway.
We did plan to play 4 hours of Dirge of Cerberus cutscenes and then record the podcast about it, but somehow that didn't happen.
There just wasn't enough time. It's too much Dirge of Cerberus.
We did do an official Final Fantasy game tier list in the sand on the beach.
Yes.
Yesterday.
We did. Final Fantasy IX was in S tier, and then I wrote ScatheMote in F tier.
And then I wrote BlueHighwind in F- tier.
Yes.
Therefore the tier list was complete.
I was hoisted by my own petard.
And then it was all washed away by the sand, so no one will know.
And then we have special guest podcaster, The Fly, that's climbing all around me right now. Get off.
That's actually Catuse here in spirit, for he has left to go on the plane
he
already.
fled before we could get to Taco Bell.
Sadly. So this is all of us coming together in physical reality, which is weird to imagine. It is bizarre that after 16 years or whatever of all of us knowing each other, that we've come together and are all still friends, and in some cases more than friends, and in some cases mortal enemies, but we don't know that yet.
I think I know two who are.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you all. It's nice to see you all.
Yeah, go FFWiki.
Woo!
We love her.
Woo!
FFWiki, finally, 2023.
Let me get ready. So 3, 2, 1. The Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast is brought to you by Glenn. You know, your favorite Final Fantasy VII character, Glenn. Glenn Lodbrok. You know, you wrote fan fiction about him in high school. You paired him with Yuffie. You paired him with Nero the Sable. You drew pictures of him. Glenn. He's so important to you and your, foundations as a person. Glenn. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast, the official podcast of Final Fantasy Wikiing, though specifically it's the podcast of the fandom.com Final Fantasy Wiki. If you're part of some other Final Fantasy Wiki, I guess you're invited on, but little do you know you're actually represented by this podcast. I'm your host, BlueHighwind, and joining me tonight is Technobliterator.
What's up? Haven't been on in a while, but welcome.
Yeah, you're back because you didn't want to talk about Final Fantasy 16, and we finally get to.
Because I haven't played it.
Well, we finally
played it. There's nothing to talk about.
Well, we finally get to talk about not Final Fantasy 16, which is very exciting.
Okay, but also guess which game we have to mention in the news this month anyway.
Final Fantasy Mystic Quest.
Yeah, that's there's definitely been news about that.
And you just heard the voice of SomeColorMage!
Hi! Hello.
Yeah. It's nearly October, and the weather got extremely cold all at once in both Australia and America, which is where we've been. We've been across many different places. How... I don't even know where to start. There's so much to talk about this month. We're going to have a...
Most of our stuff is focused on one particular entry, so let's just quickly get, the 14 and 16 years out of the way first, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then get through Ever Crisis just as quickly, because I don't think any of us really, like... There's interesting stuff from it, but let's just say I don't think any of us are going to be playing this game for any significant amount of time. So let's go with 16 and 14 first.
So you want to talk about 16 first. I was going to talk about real stuff that happened in the real world.
Yeah, do the real stuff first.
Okay, so real
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
All right, so real stuff, you will hear at probably the beginning of this episode before my stupid, semi-funny bit about what this podcast is brought to you by is a message from all of us who went to Australia for the Big Wiki Wedding. Woo! Wiki Wedding! It was actually very emotional, and I was very touched. I am happy to have known people for as long as I have, and to see many of them, as it turns out, grow up because they were on the wiki when they were like 12 years old, and I had no idea. But yeah, well, so that's very impressive. Most of the bride and groom are not joining us tonight, but they will be in that message. So there's that. I should also mention that I flew all the way to Australia, and on my way I took a little pit stop in a place called Japan. Now, have you heard of Japan?
I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
no, like completely new to me. Oh my god, I need to update my world map.
Yeah, it's this mysterious kingdom on the far side of the world. It shows up in Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels as a fantasy land, but as it turns out, it's a real place. And I went to the Eorzea Cafe for Final Fantasy XIV stuff for lunch. And
Wait, is it still a kingdom?
Yeah, it's an empire, technically.
Shit, I guess it is. Yeah, I guess they still got an emperor. Fuck.
They
Yeah,
still
I mean,
have an
technically
emperor.
speaking, there's still an emperor, but they have bugger all power.
Well,
Right.
not to derail us into history knowledge, but the Emperor of Japan has almost never actually wielded any power. It has always been in the hands of a shogun or a prime minister or whatever. It's a very weird kind of system where the figurehead never really holds control. And I guess there's a level of plausible deniability if you're, say, Emperor Showa and create a world war and probably deserve worse punishment for what you've done. But that's way off topic.
Yeah.
To continue off topic, I did go to the shrine to Emperor Meiji, and that was a very cool place. It's a Shinto shrine. I bought an amulet for the married couple there. But anyway, Eorzea Cafe. This is a little pop-up cafe in Akihabara, the big nerd district. The place you go if you want to buy, say, a 30,000 yen objet d'art that's a lewd anime girl with giant boobs.
Fucking.
You could spend.
Can I visit this place in Persona 5?
Yes, I think you
Yeah,
can.
I'm pretty sure you can, yeah.
I think you can in Persona 3 too. Yeah, you've definitely been in Persona games. This is like a shopping district. It's just full. It's like a never-ending like Comic-Con. This area, and there are sketchy DVD stores where you could go upstairs and find very sketchy DVDs. I did not do that, but the Eorzea Cafe, I had lunch there. It was weird, is how I would describe the experience if you don't speak Japanese, because the waiters and waitresses, they did not speak English. So they basically handed me a tablet, and that's where I had to order off of. And I got a free drink, which was not alcoholic, but I was unaware of that. And I'm like, oh, there's just no alcohol in this. This is somewhat disappointing. And then I ordered curry, which was good. It was in the shape of a mound of some creature. I'm not sure what.
Nice.
And then I ate a chocobo's head, which was it was a bun with just kind of icing inside.
No, you ate a literal chocobo's head. You literally found a real chocobo, slaughtered it, and ate its head.
Yeah. So
Yeah, you know, that people make Kentucky Fried chocobo jokes all the time, but the secret is they're actually pastries.
yeah, as it turns out, they're just full of sweetness on the inside. It's custard. That's the word I'm unable to pull. Yeah, it's a custard bun. So I wouldn't go alone, to either Tokyo or the Eorzea Cafe, because you end up just eating your food and then being like, well, what else do I do here? I kind of scheduled my entire afternoon around going to the spot, and now I've already eaten, so I guess I'll just be on my way. They did Final Fantasy XIV trivia, which I would probably not be very good at answering, even less so because it was all in Japanese.
I was gonna say, it's like a double whammy, that shit.
So
God,
like,
in Japanese, I'm the person who plays the game, and even in Japanese, I'd fuck that up.
well,
Yeah.
the waitress suddenly gets on the mic and she starts talking, and I'm like, oh, I guess it's somebody's birthday or something. So then the guy next to me responds in Japanese, and she's like, yay, and I clap too, because I assumed it must be an occasion for him. And turns out, no, he's just answering the questions, whatever they are. And then he got, like, a coaster. They just hand you coasters nonstop. Not very good coasters, either. They're pretty, but they're made out of cardboard. So if you put a drink on them, they'll just dissolve instantly. So that's my physical Final Fantasy pilgrimage. It was
Interesting.
Curious experience, I'd say. The food was good and relatively cheap. I think I spent probably only like $22 for the whole thing.
Oh wow, that's good.
Yeah, the yen is...
Exchange rate is really favorable towards foreign currency in Japan right now.
The exchange rate for American dollars is fantastic everywhere. 100 yen used to be $1. It's now like 60 cents. Which leads me to my other extremely dark discovery. If you go to a 7-Eleven in Tokyo, they will sell beer, like cans of beer, for about 300 yen. Which is...
I'm more shocked that they have 7-Eleven in Tokyo.
No, the 7-Eleven is extremely popular in East Asia.
Huge in Tokyo.
Yeah, in East Asia.
Really?
7-Eleven is gigantic all across the world over there.
I'm pretty sure 7-Eleven is bigger in Japan than it is in the US.
Yeah, it's all over Thailand.
Okay.
I can't speak for China, but I imagine it's very popular in like Taiwan, and it's there in Singapore too.
I'm sure there's probably like it's probably doesn't exist in China to the same extent because different laws and all that shit. But definitely, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in South Korea, by the sounds of it.
Anyway, just to finish my story, a $2 bottle of beer, which is what that is. That's not so bad. That's not so shocking. What is shocking is you can get a bottle of soju, or even sake, for roughly that same amount of money. That's $2, and those are 30% alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, to those who don't know what those are, they're basically like...
They're
I don't know
wine.
how you describe the...
They're rice wine.
Yeah, I guess that's the way you describe it, presumably. But it's, those are Japan's favorite alcoholic drinks, and they're actually pretty fucking nice. Like,
yeah, a Japanese... I don't want to offend anybody, but Japanese beer is pretty bad. Like, the best
I don't like any country's beer, so...
The best...
So that's gonna lose.
Beer's universal trait is that it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I've never understood beer, man. I've always been a cider person, but maybe that's the Eastern European in me.
I like cider too, but there's good beer and there's bad beer. Japanese beer is at best passable. At worst, it was the worst IPA I've ever had in my entire life.
Okay.
But if you buy a soju, I ended up with like 2 of these at the airport waiting to go home. You're getting blazed on that. 2 sojus in the morning, that's a time. Your head will be spinning very quickly, so please watch out, listeners who are going to Japan. But anyway, I've talked enough about myself. We wanted to talk about Final Fantasy 16, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much. There's not really much to talk about. They announced that the PC version is actually going to happen sometime next year, and there's also 2 DLC expansions planned.
Yeah, I'm not shocked by that. Like, I was under the impression that was basically always gonna happen, because I think it was one of the first announcements where they said like, oh, it's exclusive for a time.
It was in the launch trailer, yeah, and then they took it out after the first airing of that because they weren't supposed to say that as a fucking PS5 PS5 showcase.
Yeah,
Right.
it's supposed to be a timed
Yeah.
exclusive with Sony. That's the deal that they had. But everyone knew immediately this is coming to PC and relatively quickly.
And even if it wasn't, like, even if, you know, if all the rumors are true and Sony does buy Square Enix, like, they would release it on PC anyway, because there are no, like...
Sony's not buying Square Enix.
I don't think they are either. But, like, you know, Sony releases all their exclusives to PC eventually now anyway. So, you know, at this point, like, something coming to PC isn't really surprising. Well, you know, you add that on top of the fact that, like, basically, my understanding of what they've said about the sales is they've said that, hey, they're good considering the constraints of the platform we're on. You know, so considering that the install base of the PS5 is what it is, they're good within that, right? So for us to expand sales, we need to get more people PS5s, and also, by the sound of it, just put the game on PC.
Yeah, like, it could have been better, but overall it made a profit. Like,
Yeah,
it's not a
basically-
flop. It's like, and like that profit may be rather thin, but like at this point they've, like, I think within the first week or so they'd completely paid off the game, and any other sales beyond that are pure profit.
Right, yeah, basically, like, you know, I haven't played the game, so I can't speak on that. What I can speak on is the whole conversation around the sales has just been so infuriating to me, because I remember this exact same shit happened with 7 Remake. You know, there's certain Final Fantasy fans who don't like whatever the latest Final Fantasy is that come out. So they're
Yeah,
always
like
looking
me.
for everything. Well,
Speaking right here.
no, I'm talking about people much more toxic than
Yeah, I
you.
know.
But there's all these people who will find anything they can to, like, prove, oh, this was a failure, and that's why they should go back to, like, you know, they should go back to FF10 again, or they should make FF9 or whatever the hell, right? You know, so there'll always be all these obnoxious people will find anything they can to prove something was a flop or was a success, right? And equally, you know, there's a lot of people who really love Final Fantasy 16 who understandably want to see it succeed, right? You know, but ultimately the answer was in the middle of the two. It wasn't a flop. It wasn't like the biggest blowout blockbuster of all time, right? It just did well. It did perfectly fine. Like, they are happy with it, right? It hasn't saved the company from all their dumbass mistakes, right? So when, you know, oh god, that part was so annoying when, like you probably know what I'm talking about, so you can elaborate on it.
Yeah, and I can just point out right now, just for any sort of argument involving that, there is nothing that Square Enix could have done to reverse the financial damage Forspoken did. Like,
Right.
I don't think like 15's launch, because its post-launch was, but I don't think 15's launch would have undone the amount of damage Forspoken did.
Right, exactly, man. Yeah, it's just, you know, the conversation around it has been so infuriating, right? And it's just like, no one wants to just accept this game did fine. Like, it just did alright. You know, and just, like, people have to make some kind of narrative about what the hell that means. Like, it doesn't mean shit, man. It means, you know, this is their first attempt at making a game like this, and, you know, they'll come away with what they can learn from this, what they can improve on, X, Y, Z, and that's just how this company operates, right? You know, but anyway, that's kind of a tangent from the main topic.
There's I mean, yeah, but like on sales stuff, there is a couple things I do want to touch on as well. First of all, this month they announced that 7 Remake and Integrate combined top 7 million sales. So that's
that's true.
okay.
That's true. I saw that.
That's
Also,
those are good numbers.
They are quite good numbers, yeah.
And the other thing, while most of the posts about this have been completely fucking insufferable, there was one interesting one I saw from someone who's worked with Square Enix in the past, and they're wondering about the opportunity cost of these exclusives that also coincidentally never make it to Xbox. Because while Final Fantasy sales on the Xbox are pretty terrible, there's a bit of opportunity cost lost there because the ones that Xbox did get, they advertised the shit out of them. Like, and this is something I can definitely confirm. When 13 and 15 were coming out, their advertisements were mostly being backed by Microsoft. Like, they were Xbox ads. And
Wait, 15?
Yeah.
15 came out on Xbox, yeah.
Oh shit, you're right, it did. Fuck,
Yeah, that was a.
memory
I think that
sucks.
was. They were all cross-console until 16. It was the first exclusive for a while.
And
Until 7 Remake, yeah.
And, like, while Square Enix does advertising just fine, people like to say Square Enix doesn't advertise. That's a fucking lie, and people just don't realize that The World Ends With You is not a big seller.
You gotta hurt me now.
I love those games, but it's true.
It is true.
But the thing is, it's possible that, like, you know, they are losing a bit of awareness because Microsoft was just so aggressive with advertising those games that they probably led to more PlayStation sales of those games than Xbox sales from those ads.
I don't think 16 lacked in advertising. Because, I can also say that trains in Sydney had big, giant Final Fantasy 16 banners on the side of them. But, there have been huge Final Fantasy 16 banners all throughout public transport down here. But it's also, like, it's kind of an interesting question. How do you advertise anymore? Because, like, nobody watches TV. Everyone knows
YouTube
that banner ads don't do anything.
Ads?
Are there ads on TikTok? I don't do TikTok.
I think so. I don't do TikTok either, but there's no way those creators are getting that much money if there's not some form of advertising.
Maybe they need like Taylor Swift to announce that she's dating Glenn Ludbrook, and that would get the conversation going.
All right, for the non-Americans listening to this, basically, Americans are so obsessed with this because she's dating an NFL star, and that's why people suddenly care about this. Because it's a crossover between Taylor Swift fans, which are fucking huge, and NFL fans, which in this country are also fucking huge.
You could be both, but you could hate the Chiefs like a certain BlueHighwind and be in deep...
I rooted for him in the Super Bowl because I was rooting against the Eagles.
But in deep
I
agony...
don't care about the Chiefs.
Right. I created a tangent, and then I tried to fight against the tangents, and now I don't even remember what we were talking about.
We're talking about 16 being advertised everywhere.
Yeah. So 16 was not lacking for advertising power. Sony put all their muscle behind it.
It wasn't lacking, but at the same time, if you could get more by partnering with someone else, I don't think there's a theory that you can over-advertise something, really.
I would say 16's release felt slightly more low-key than 15's, where 15, they did everything. They made a movie, they had an anime, they had shitty phone apps, they had, ramen was 13, but Cup of Noodles...
Ramen was 15.
Cup of Noodles are not ramen, sorry, I need to be clear on that.
With 15, I almost feel like that was to its detriment, because they created a load of hype around it, and they never really lived up to that.
Also that side stuff, most of it was not well liked.
Yeah.
All those phone apps failed. I don't think I ever hear anyone saying something good about the movie.
No.
I feel like they, seeing the reaction to 15, they decided to go in completely the other direction and release no side stuff about it.
A lot of 16's marketing has definitely been a direct response to 15, like how the DLC not being announced until this month is part of that, because the season 2 DLC stuff for 15 really burned a lot of people. So it was like, we will not announce DLC until it's in a state where it has to come out.
Didn't Yoshi P say that there would be no DLC? Did he not?
He said he wasn't planning it. Something.
Weasel. He got me in the Weasel politics words. He said,
"Yeah.
All right, we're asking players to pay the full price for this experience, and we want an experience that's going to be blah 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 blah. we have no plans for DLC at this time.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I have one last thing to say on 16 before we move on, because
Yep.
for a non-16 podcast, we've talked about it a decent amount, and that's my fault. But the thing I always thought with 16 sales, like, it wasn't going to sell through some massive advertising campaign. My theory has always been it's going to release, and then it's going to sell mostly through word of mouth. Like, it's mostly going to sell through, like, you know, people talk about, oh shit, how good this game is, and then it being as accessible as it is to non-Final Fantasy fans. That's how it would rope people in, and that was always my theory on it. I'm not saying that won't ever possibly materialize. I'm just saying that, like, you know, at least at this point, I haven't yet seen evidence of that. So it may turn around and be like a cult classic later down the line, but at this point, like, I don't know that it's like, to do something like that, you'd basically have to be Elden Ring, and not to knock 16, but I don't think it's Elden Ring.
I mean, I wouldn't call it cult, because, like, it's already sold decently enough, and, like, it's not like, and
Yeah,
like, you know,
yeah.
cult classics tend to go completely ignored, but, like, this reviewed as well as 7 Remake did, really. Like, in fact, I think
I think it
was
reviewed
exactly
better.
the same Meta score.
It was either the same or better, yeah, somewhere along those lines. But yeah, it basically, this game did perfectly well. Like, you know, and people need to not rush to conclusions one way or the other.
Okay.
Like, the only reason why I don't think Final Fantasy 16 is a Game of the Year contender is that this year turned out to be unexpectedly fucking stacked.
Yeah, like, you know, fucking Spider-Man 2 is gonna be Game of the Year, man.
I need to...
Because Sony always win that shit.
I need to write my top 10 games of the year list that I always do in January, and I cannot in good conscience put Final Fantasy 16 on that list. And yet, I do not have enough games to fill the list up yet, so I don't know what I'm going to do.
Alright, so the next news is 14?
No.
Yeah.
Let's get back to organize. I have a whole list here. So news. Go back. So here's a bit of news here from the beginning of this month. Final Fantasy XIV player has described all of 1.0 into an archive for its 10th anniversary. Now, this was the failed Final Fantasy XIV version that was one of the biggest catastrophes in Square Enix history. So there's now an archive of at least the entire text of it and all of the main quests.
If you want to talk about something that was a catastrophe, that shit was a catastrophe.
Yes.
Like, there you go.
This is user Merc Menagerie, who posted, I think, a lot of this on Twitter, and this is just a useful historical document. We are a wiki, so we are into these sorts of historical nonsense and ephemera, even if they are for a game that was objectively completely horrible.
Oh, yeah. Like, pretty much every metric.
It's still, I guess it's still kind of interesting, because sometimes, even though, you know, that story is completely inaccessible these days, they will pull something out of it, like the Alexander arc in Heavensward is a direct sequel to something that happened in 1.0. Like,
Okay.
Directly references the events of the Limsa starting quests in 1.0. Like, the villain of that, like Limsa's starting arc in 1.0 got completely dropped on the floor after it's done, but it's clearly building up to something. But so then they just, that artifact that dude stole, that is actually key to activating Alexander.
Okay. Sorry, we have to go back to 16. I have some bad news. We have to go back to 16 because there was a free DLC, not really DLC, but like an update. There's new costumes for the playable characters.
Those.
Yeah, so there's a new costume for Clive, a new costume for Jill, for your brother, whatever his name was. Joshua! Yeah. The dog and the chocobo. And I think most of these are pretty mid, except for Jill's. Jill's looks pretty good. It's better than her current costume.
Clive's looks better in game than on picture because it does have a glow effect. Like that's how you can truly tell this is a team of Final Fantasy 14 devs because something glows.
Yeah. Jill's costume is better than her base one. This is just how she should always look. She looks like a Final Fantasy character now.
They're also like partly trying to fix the scoring in arcade mode because it's kind of, I mean, arcade mode seems kind of pointless to begin with generally because like it's just a score attack thing and the scoring system's just kind of dumb.
Well, at least it doesn't give you like an A or S tier or F tier like in Devil May Cry, which always just got on my nerves, honestly. In
arcade mode it does.
Oh, yeah, I don't really want that. There's an update on the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. Or not really an update, but just a bit of news. 3 million copies have been sold of that product.
Yep. Good numbers. Like, I'm happy with it, you know. I still need to buy it for PS5. But being a homeowner is expensive.
It is. A lot of people have been doing extremely adult things here in the wiki world, like getting married, buying houses.
I will say, like, with Pixel Remaster, I'd be interested to see, like, you know, how public opinion has changed on it since they released it on console. Because, like, I know, like, the two biggest complaints when it came out was it's not on console, it now is, and the font, which I believe they fixed the font. So, you know, the
new font isn't perfect, but it does feel a lot more appropriate.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's that plus like there's a couple things where basically if you're a massive Final Fantasy nerd like we are, we'll notice things that are wrong with the Pixel remasters. But even still, like, you know, if someone said to me, "Hey, I want to check out your favorite game of all time," right? And I said, "Well, Metal Gear Solid 3 is getting a remake," and they say, "Oh no, your other one." I'd say, "Oh, okay, you should get Final Fantasy VI Pixel remaster." Like, I can't imagine introducing anyone new to these remasters in any other way.
See, I'm the opposite of you because if someone said, I want to play your favorite game of all time, I would say, yes, you want to play Wind Waker, but don't play the Wii U version because I hate the bloom effect and the game looks way too washed out. Please play the GameCube version. Here's my GameCube, here's my copy. You can go play it right now.
I understand that, but it's like the people who say the same about the Crash Insane trilogy. Right, you know, like me personally, I grew up with Crash Bandicoot. It was literally my first game I ever played before I played Ratchet and Clank. Right, you know, so I notice a bunch of things in the Insane trilogy where I'm like, oh, I don't like that they animated it that way. I don't like that they did XYZ. There's a bunch of things that like bother me about it, where I feel like they missed the charm of the originals. But even still, like, you know, it plays well. You know, it's easy for someone new to get into them. Like, I couldn't in good conscience say, no, you should go download a PS1 emulator and get the very original version of the game with the jank-looking graphics. I couldn't say that to someone. Like, you know, I could say play this version, and then if you want to go check out the original, because I think there's things the original did better, then fine. Like, you know, it's not the same. Like, it's not the same thing as, like, you know, Final Fantasy VII Remake, where it is a legit question between, like, you know, which you should play first. Like, and we're gonna get to that soon.
Well, you should play the original first. Clearly.
Yeah, that you should, but we'll get to that in a minute when we talk about fucking Ever Crisis.
Well, all right, we gotta wait on Ever Crisis because, in more humorous news, the Final Fantasy tabletop RPG was accidentally leaked like 3 days before they were supposed to actually show it at TGS. So now...
Yeah, there you go.
Wait, there's a Final Fantasy tabletop RPG? What the fuck?
Yeah, it's Final Fantasy...
Oh, shit, alright.
Final Fantasy 14 flavored.
Oh, 14, okay.
Yeah, so far they just have the starter set listed on the Square Enix store. I don't know if there's other versions. This listing was down, but it seems to be...
They did say there are other books planned, and yeah, it is up. I mean, it's on the 14 site now, so I can just.
Are we
Yeah,
at the point where we can officially say that Final Fantasy XIV is now the biggest Final Fantasy ever made?
I think
Like,
we could have said that maybe like 4 years ago at this point.
Well, probably yeah, but like it's just starting to because I remember like growing up not too long ago, and like Final Fantasy VII was always this big thing that like just everyone would talk about as this huge like 10 as well to an extent, but those are the ones that people would always talk about as like this amazing game that came out that one time, right? And over time, it's not that those have faded so much, it's just that so many new games have come out since then, that it's like, like, for example, like if you talk about like what's the best narrative game that ever came out, there was a time when people would say 7. I think these days people would say The Last of Us, as an example.
Oh,
right?
You mean like in all video games?
Yeah. Like, if you talk about the general broad video game public, like it would be brought up all the time. And you would be able to run into like Final Fantasy VII fans all the time, like in real life. These days, I feel like I'm much more often encountering Final Fantasy XIV fans. And there's a Final Fantasy XIV cookbook that I found the other day.
We talked about that here. We mentioned that on the podcast last year. I think I said I was going to buy it and then cook something out of it, and then I never did.
Yeah, I would, except I'm vegan, so it probably wouldn't help me very much. But like, you just see this like in the cultural zeitgeist. I feel like we are now at the point where 14 has maybe not, I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, it's hard to say because, if someone said like, oh, well, like Kendrick has surpassed Tupac, I would slap them in the fucking face and say, I love Kendrick, but you cannot replace Tupac for me. Right? Like, so maybe like 7 still has that place, but I just feel like, at least as a casual observer who doesn't play 14, I've seen and heard so much about it in the general public that I feel like we might be at the point where I think it's surpassed. I might be wrong, but that's my feeling on it.
I'm not sure if surpassed is correct at this point, but 7 and 14 are definitely the 2 entries in the series that have actually successfully become franchises in and of themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that part isn't even debatable, for sure.
I have a very important question for Techno, though. Who has surpassed Tupac in the last 20 years?
No one. Like,
not Kanye? Not Jay-Z?
No. I mean, like, Jay-Z and Kendrick Lamar are both amazing in their own right. But, like, my argument for Tupac is just that, literally the guy died when he was 25. Jay-Z didn't exist in the cultural zeitgeist until he was 26 and he released Reasonable Doubt. And then it took him years after that before he released The Blueprint, and that's when everyone actually knew about him. Right?
How about Drake? Has Drake surpassed Tupac?
Well, here's the thing. Like, in terms of sales, then sure. Like, Eminem surpassed everyone ages ago. Drake has probably surpassed... he's either equal with or surpassed Eminem by this point. Right. In terms of sales, sure. In terms of technical ability, yeah, that was never Tupac's strength. But in terms of how much he accomplished in his short space of time and how big of an impact he had and how he did that before everyone else even came close, I just think no one comes close to Tupac.
How about the Insane Clown Posse? Have they surpassed Tupac?
That's a good one.
All right.
Okay, so I have the details in front of me now. So the base game, so the starter set includes like a basic player and game master book that includes like the general rules and 3 pre-made scenarios, as well as 4 pre-made character sheets and a bunch of the tat and stuff, the dice and like markers and stuff. And there are 2 other books currently announced that haven't been that aren't like on the store or anything. There's like a full rule book and an expanded game master guide.
Okay, and we don't really know what system this is working on maybe it's its
I mean,
own system entirely.
Looking at the dice, it appears to be an original system because,
Alright.
like, for a lot of this stuff, people generally assume it's going to be something using like the Dungeons and Dragons standard resource document. Like, there are a lot of things out there that are basically just expansions of Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, but this, like the stuff they've included with it, this seems like it would be completely original.
I asked that question as if I knew anything about tabletop RPGs, and I know basically nothing.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
I'm totally lost there, to be honest.
I do see that there are, I think, 20-sided dice in this listing.
But yeah, we really don't know that much about this in general. It's basically just the store description.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did post it early, so I think they had to shut the post down because it was an accident for them showing it at all.
They took it down, and then later in the day, they just decided fuck it and formally announced it.
Because nothing stays a secret anymore. I mean, there's Spider-Man 2 PlayStation 5 spoilers floating around right now.
They're not. I just looked at them. They're not. It's basically the trophy list came out, and people have tried to find spoilers from that. It's nothing big.
Okay. Let's do 3 more news hits, but we'll do them real fast because they're not very long, and then we can move on to another major topic. So, RPG discourse. This is the JRPG discourse specifically, whether or not that term is good. Nomura has said that he's not particularly keen on it, that he recalls that at a time when he was first starting out that everyone just called it RPGs, then at some point later he found that people were calling it JRPGs.
You're on about the term.
Yeah. His quote is, "I'm not really sure what the intent behind that is. It just always felt a bit off to me and a bit weird. I never really understood it or why it's needed." Meanwhile, Catuse says that I don't see it as a derogative. I can't. Oh, SomeColorMage has disappeared.
Rip.
Yeah.
We'll
continue without. Oh, he's returned.
There he is.
Yay! SomeColorMage, you disappeared.
Yeah, I know. Discord fucking sucks.
Yeah. I'm leaving it in. I don't feel like editing it out. Anyway, Catuse says, personally, I don't see it as that derogative. That's a weird word.
Yeah.
I think obviously with modern gaming titles developed in the West are the majority now. So if JRPG is only used in terms of differentiating, maybe showing off a slightly different approach to games or a unique flavor in terms of Japanese-made games, I'm absolutely fine with that. So the argument continues, and I think we will never find an answer at this point. JRPG discourse will continue for all time.
It is fucking stupid, man. I mean, I didn't hear half of what you said because Discord, but yeah, it's the JRPG thing again, isn't it? Like,
Nomura likes it, Catuse doesn't. No, Nomura doesn't like it, Catuse doesn't care.
It doesn't matter what the medium is. Like, genres are always stupid. Like, they're never accurate. They're always, super bad descriptors. Like, if we use music as another example, like, when you hear pop music, people will always tell you, oh, pop, that just means music that just happens to be popular, right? Okay, so how can we have a genre called indie pop? Explain that. You can't, because genres are fucking stupid. It's just marketing. It's just marketing labels to say, and if people use the term JRPG to say a certain category of specific RPGs that just so happen to be developed by Japanese developers that have this type of gameplay, they're not going to understand it from that perspective. But, if the developers themselves are saying, it sounds like they're kind of mixed on if they like the term or not.
Yoshi
to be honest,
P was very against it. That's where this discussion began many months ago.
Right.
I mean, if we go into the distant past, technically this started a decade or so ago when some BioWare writer tried to pretend like they were better than Japanese writers.
We don't need to relitigate this whole thing. We've had this whole conversation.
No, yeah,
we've had this whole conversation on the podcast already.
I'm just going to say, Final Fantasy 16 better than Starfield any day of the week. That's what I'm going to say.
But you haven't, have you played either one of them?
I haven't played either one of them, and I know which one I'd rather play.
Okay. I haven't. Honestly, there's nothing in Starfield that looked at all interesting to me on any level, so I guess I agree
I can
with
see
you.
the appeal. I can see the appeal.
I don't.
No.
I truly, I don't get what people get out of Bethesda video games, to be completely honest.
Yeah, you play one, you played them all, and like, you know, I've played like 5 minutes of Skyrim, and yeah, I've played them all.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people love that shit,
Okay.
and I can understand why.
2 more news hits. We're going to do them real
Yep.
fast. Okay. So, Final Fantasy VIII's main character, Squall, has a cameo in Jujutsu Kaisen, Season 2, Episode 33. He's in the background of a shot.
Cool.
So if you
Cool.
care about that anime, which I don't really, but he's there. This means a lot to somebody. Somebody's cheering in the audience. I don't know who. And finally,
Good for them.
if, say, you have just returned from Japan and
Who?
missed out, possibly, there's a Final Fantasy XIV KFC event. So the Colonel, he's in Eorzea right now eating chicken, and I think you could do something.
Yeah,
You can buy like meals in actual Japan, and
this isn't the first time Final Fantasy XIV has collaborated with KFC. There was the fat black chocobo incident, which was a promo in China where like you got the fat black chocobo mount in game if you bought like this gigantic family meal.
Oh
And,
fucking
like-
hell!
what's
And,
interesting.
like, you had to finish it in store, and because MMO people are the least well-adjusted people on the planet, some people tried to do this solo. Like, what the fuck?
What's interesting is.
That thing had like 8 burgers in it.
What's interesting is that KFC is possibly the worst fast food here in America. It is pure grease. It's like the worst fried chicken you can get. Yet in East Asia, it is a major institution. It's a big thing in Japan. It's a big thing in China. I haven't tried.
It's a big thing in the UK.
Is it?
It's a big thing basically everywhere other than the US. And in Kentucky, you ask actual people from Kentucky, they'll say, we don't like KFC. There's way better fried chicken elsewhere.
Yeah,
it's so funny. It's
Even as-
big and respected everywhere outside of the place it's actually from.
If you want American fried chicken, you should go to Popeyes. You could go to like 3 other different places that are in North Carolina that are quite good. But yeah, KFC, it's just grease. That's the only flavor I can describe of it. It's not good. 16 herbs and spices, all completely wasted to give you nothing but the flavor of needing to take a shower. Taco Bell, though, fantastic. Unrelated. So that's all the news, except for, well...
Oh, there was one 14 thing that was skipped over.
Oh,
patch,
sorry.
6.5, patch 6.5 Growing Light is out next week, October 3rd, I believe. This is the end of this is part 1 of the end of Endwalker's patch cycle, so it's wrapping up the the Void story that has been brought up a few times on this podcast. There's going to be a fight against Zeramis. So Growing Light Part 2 is slated for January. These are also deliberately timed around the FanFest. So Europe FanFest is later in October, and Japan FanFest is later in January. So and also it sounded like there was instead of being a part 1, part 2 story in 2 halves, it does sound like that part 1 is finishing up the things that started in Endwalker, and part 2 is basically just getting all the pieces into place for Dawn Trail.
Okay. We can move on to, I guess, what our main topic is. Well, we have 2 major topics. Because there's one gigantic bit of news that will define the podcast for the next 6 months, roughly. And then there is a minor bit of news, which is the new Final Fantasy game that joins our ranks this month. The long-awaited, ever-delayed Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, the phone mobile remake slash compilation slash prequel slash reworking of stuff that didn't really work out in Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis.
I don't think they even plan to have this story in The First Soldier, because this storyline takes place like a decade after when The First Soldier supposedly took place.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's like the naming is so stupid. Like, here's the thing with this game. So you know how earlier in the podcast I said, you know, if someone has never experienced Final Fantasy VII before and they want to experience it, and the choice is either 7 original or 7 remake. Like, originally, this game, when it was first ever marketed, was marketed as the third way to play it. It was marketed as, quote, another possibility for a remake. This is not a way to experience Final Fantasy VII, and it should not be your way to experience it. This is quite possibly of those 3 choices. I would not even consider this a choice, because it is by far the worst one. Now, what it is instead is it's a gacha game that's basically Final Fantasy Record Keeper. And if you're not familiar with that, what that is in between the little different segments, there are story sections, right? And in those story sections, they do actually a pretty faithful recreation of the story sections in Final Fantasy VII, the original, except like, you know, occasionally...
A recreation of some of the story sections.
Okay,
of some of them, that's right.
Why don't we rewind slightly, and we could go and find out who here has actually played Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. So I will start out, first of all, by saying that I did download it on my phone, and I never actually launched it. So,
yeah,
Techno, you played it?
I
have, to a decent extent.
SomeColorMage, you played any of it?
Yeah, I played it, dropped it, because, like, it's not a good game.
Okay, so...
No, so...
What actually is in this initial download?
Okay, so...
Okay, so there was actually a story
update,
like, yesterday. But since we will... Probably, I don't think either of us have any experience with that, so it's just going to be what was there at launch. So there's this. So at launch, the story's available. There's Final Fantasy VII up till you leave Midgar.
All right.
Yep.
There's Crisis Core up till the fight against Ifrit, which is like something like 2 hours into the original game. There's like nothing there.
That's
you
just
like,
the
go to
Wutai segment. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
it's not even 2 hours.
Segment.
It's probably less than that.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
I mean,
2 hours of Crisis Core is like
thereabouts.
a 20th of Crisis Core, because that game's not actually all that long.
It's not very
yeah.
long. No.
Yeah, and and then there's the original storyline, which is like, you know, these characters that were first introduced in the FMV trailer for the First Soldier. Like they're going to this island to try and set up a Marco reactor. And, like they get attacked by natives. Sephiroth
Get attacked by
shows up.
natives?
Yeah,
Native to that island.
native to that island.
What are we doing here with this? Are they
They're
like...
just normal. They're just like, you know, they're basically like citizens of Midgar, except they said, "Oh, we're from this island." They're not like, you know, they didn't like say they're like an indigenous population or anything.
Kind of,
Okay,
like,
alright.
it's not that kind of thing. It's just like
I'm picturing
I
like
feel
the
like
village
it's
from
just,
King Kong level of...
No, nothing like that.
not that bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright,
Like,
so
I think
we...
it's still bad, but like it's not like it's not like, oh, this is just racist. No, it's just poorly written.
Yeah, basically, like, you know, so what it does is in the story content of the game, they have like mostly faithful recreation for the FF7 part. It's mostly faithful recreations of some of the cutscenes, except like occasionally, you know, the cutscene will end with, "Oh no, there are, you know, Shinra soldiers showing up. How annoying." Right, you know, and that's the only thing they'll change about it is like some Shinra people show up because they have to put gameplay in there, right?
Okay.
And those parts fucking suck because you'll go through like all these iconic bits, for example, from War Market. You know, do you ever fight Hell House? Not once. Do you ever fight anyone who was actually in those segments? Nope, you fight a bunch of Shinra troopers again.
And-
Also, like, they've managed to come up with a version of Final Fantasy VII that completely skips the Honeybee Inn, which is amazing, since that's what everyone feared about 7 Remake, and then no, they made it even better than the original.
Okay,
Right.
I've actually launched this game just for curiosity while we've been having this conversation, and I can say this seems like it plays exactly the same as Nier Reincarnation, which was
Pretty much.
Yeah, so you
same,
just
same developers.
you just wait for the thing to load up so you can go do your attack, and it's purely do you have enough numbers to overcome the other number. And I can't beat
Yeah.
Sephiroth.
Yeah.
That seems to be the tutorial fight.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
that-
it's just, it's basically what they market it as. It's not that, although we mostly accepted since that it wasn't going to be that. Like, what it is instead, right, is it's a way for them to deliver new story content, which that part is, still cool with that.
Yeah,
Like, with the first
there is-
soldier. Go on.
there are some interesting things. Like, after you finish that Final Fantasy VII section, you do unlock some side stories, which are things about backstory of of a few of the characters that's not in the game. Like, you
And young
unlock
Sephiroth.
well, yes, but the young Sephiroth wasn't in the launch thing. The young Sephiroth was added yesterday.
That's disappointing.
Oh, there's some cutscenes of Sephiroth.
Yeah, there
even
are
in the
some
launch thing.
cutscenes of him in the original, but he was added as a playable character yesterday.
Oh,
Right,
Techno.
yeah.
Techno,
Go
I have
on.
a question for you. Has young Sephiroth surpassed Tupac at this point?
Good one.
So, there's some character stuff that. So, there are some few side story things, and they were okay. I didn't do all of them because the power requirements for them, you must be this number to have any chance of the fight. They're just really overtuned for some of them, and I hear that they've been working on fixing this, but you can barely play the game. This is a gacha game, so it's got the fucking stamina meter shit, and also it charges extremely slowly, and the thing encourages you when you're grinding to spend triple the amount of stamina to get triple reward. So you're running through 6 hours worth of stamina in a single fight.
Yeah, here's the thing, right?
I'm not.
The reason I'm quite down on this, and I'm just gonna caveat this with I've never played a gacha game at launch before, right? The only time I ever played a gacha game and actually enjoyed myself was the Dissidia one, right? And I've since stopped playing that game because it got to a certain point where basically they just power creep the heck out of everything, and basically fights started at a point when it was actually taking out time from my day to try and beat some of the fights. I was just I don't have time for this shit. It's not fun anymore, right? But Dissidia was the reason why that one was really, really good. Was not just the story content was actually super interesting, right? It was the gameplay mechanics of it were actually really they made them really interesting in how every character played and how you were able to actually think about certain bosses you were fighting and how you'd use your characters in certain different ways.
Also, translating Dissidia mechanics to a turn-based RPG is just inherently a fairly interesting system.
Right, that too, yeah. But the third and most important one is that you can get away without paying a single dime on that game, and it will become a really fun experience. You don't have to pay anything to get through that game and to enjoy yourself and for it to be a great time. And so I just really respected it for that. Ironically, a free-to-play game, I'm only gonna spend money on it if they allow me to get through it without spending money, because then I'm oh, okay, I respect that. You can have a couple bucks for it, right? But with the Dissidia game, I thought that one was really, really good, and it had really good mechanics. And this, at this point, just doesn't. You know, at this point, like, it's just not fun enough for me. So I'll say, like, you know, if you're an absolute sucker for these kind of games, if you're a real sucker for gacha games, like, you know, that you will be rewarded for your time with some decent original cutscenes, you know, because whenever they just do the cutscenes from FF7 again, like, if there's nothing, you know, you're not gonna find out anything new there. You're just repeating what you already know, right? You know, and I'm sure when they eventually add Before Crisis, you know, that's gonna be worth checking out because we haven't had Before Crisis ever translated over here.
I
So
think
from
they
that-
actually mentioned Before Crisis on like the live stream where they're announcing the yesterday's update. It's like, yeah, like they're going to do Before Crisis eventually. They have to kind of figure it out because like Before Crisis had 10 playable characters.
Oh yeah, that's right.
How is this game
so-
doing though? Like in terms of reception?
In terms of- So it received like a shit ton of downloads. I believe something in the range of like 1 million. But a
I
million
think it's been around
downloads,
6 million.
something like that, yeah. But you know, downloads means fuck all because you can download something and then never play it. It doesn't mean jack shit, right? You know, in terms of commercially, we're just not gonna know at this point. Like it's
Yeah,
hard to
well,
say. But
Yeah, we're going to have to wait until Sensor Tower stats for the month in a few days to get any sort of idea. But it's clearly something they're really trying to do because they've announced the Steam version of the game.
yeah,
Like,
Oh,
Like, I'll
I
say that-
definitely want to play this on my computer.
yeah.
yeah,
like, I would
also,
say-
like, but also like, if you do any sort of numbers into like, how much money you need to do such, it just becomes clear that it's so fucking weighted against you that there's no point even trying to buy in. So let's talk about the gacha. You know, that's the main thing that these things, cost their money on.
They are secretly all
weapons
slot
in-
machines. Yes, that is what they really
Yes,
are.
they're
there.
secretly also. So, like, it's a weapon gacha, but the weapons are fairly easy to get. Like, I think at the time I dropped it, I had a copy of every weapon you can get from the gacha because they were being rather generous with the free currency, but once that dries out, it's going to be horrible. Because what you're actually doing the gacha for is that so the gacha banner will have 2 featured weapons and 2 featured costumes, and like the costumes, they have passive stats that are meant to synergize well with their corresponding weapons. So like last month it was doing all like, oh, this is delayed and now we have to do our summer event in September banners, and so like they were so like you had stuff like Lifeguard Tifa.
All right. I know what I'm looking up. All right, continue. I'm sorry.
But anyway, so how these costumes work is that they're not like on the gacha themselves, but if you do a 10 pull, specifically a 10 pull, you
Oh
can't
my
do
god! Actually, this
single
is
pulls to get
more
the
extreme than I
costumes.
thought. That's not how lifeguards dress.
I know, man.
Yeah,
It's stupid.
yeah, I know. But like, if you specifically do a 10 pull, you have a stamp card that like you get a random number of stamps, and when you fill up 12, you get one of the costumes. You fill up another 12, you get another one. You get the other one. The rates, like they're better than they were during the beta, but it's still like on average every 10 pull you're getting 1.8 stamps. So on average you have to pull on a 10 pull on a banner 13 times to get both costumes. The pricing on the game, it is the most expensive option for the paid currency is like just enough for 4 pools, and that's like $100.
That's
100
all
Australian
wait.
dollars.
Yeah, but even then, that's a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, it's like 80 US dollars. It's stupid.
All right,
Like,
that
you
is
know-
a ridiculous ripoff.
Yeah,
Well,
and
it's
also,
a
like,
ripoff, but it's
best
not.
case- And like 13 is best case scenario. Worst case is 24.
Yeah, it's a ripoff, but it's not like, you know, as far as gacha games goes, like it's not out of line with what other gacha games will charge you for like the same kind of thing.
Yeah, but
But-
that's not a good thing.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
that's the
It's
price-
absolutely not.
That's the price of a
It's
full.
horrible. Like,
That's the price of Final Fantasy 16, just for context.
yeah, it's so like, you know, it's why I just can't fucking stand like, you know, like that type of shit. And the thing is, you know, with these games, because it costs so little to make them, there's gonna be like a huge return on investment for them, and that's why they're making them, right? Although it's interesting because I feel like, I might be wrong about this, but I feel like gachas have definitely gone out of style at this point. Like it's definitely. Go on.
Gachas and like live services in general are kind of in dire straits right now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. Because
I don't know.
you know,
It seems like it's unsustainable. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that there will come a point where people will just reject this en masse. But it just kind of seems like something that maybe like younger people are more accepting of than people of our cohort. Like we grew up and we had an
maybe.
understanding of what a game should cost. And to us, this is
it's-
outrageous, but maybe it's different for different types of people.
Gap. I think it's less age gap and more nationality gap. Like this kind of stuff is like considered more acceptable in Southeast Asia.
yeah.
But there's also got to be a breaking point for that.
Yeah, even
Yeah,
even
I mean, like that's probably partly to do with it, but I was talking more from the sense of like, you know, just the genre in general going out of style, you know.
Well, it's also
because-
a reality of all these games are exactly the same because there's barely any game to them.
Exactly, yeah. Like, you know, eventually, it's kind of like what happened with MMOs, right? You know, at a certain point, like, you know, an MMO costs so much of your time and money as well, but mostly, like, you know, basically, the choice of MMO is effectively you choosing not to play any other MMO, right? And at a certain point, basically every MMO was, you know, effectively underneath it was a World of Warcraft copy, but they just put a different theming over it. The reason Final Fantasy XIV was able to survive was because it was a really, really good one, right? And it really stood out. It's actually like amazing that 14 has been able to survive. It's almost like the last of its breed. No one's making MMOs anymore, right? You know, Ever Crisis does not, to me, stick out as a game that's going to be the Final Fantasy XIV of its genre. Ever Crisis to me doesn't seem like it's going to last all that long, to be completely honest. And I might be totally wrong about that.
The general thing, I believe, is there's a lot of these always online genres. They only really afford room for a duopoly. Like there's only two competitors of value. So like in the MMO scene, there's World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV. For gacha games, I think that's like, I guess there's 3 main contenders at the moment, and those would be
Genshin Impact,
Fate, all the stuff Hoyoverse puts out.
Yeah.
Grand Blue Fantasy and Fate Grand Order.
Yeah, and it's like, and what's the competitor to Destiny 2? Like,
Destiny,
no, it's Destiny.
There's a lot of them.
I don't think there is one of any value. Like
Right, because none of them are lasting.
A lot of people have tried. They're all falling apart. Like Sony fucking owns Destiny 2 now because they own Bungie, and they're still trying to put out like 10 fucking competitors to it.
You know what? Actually, no. They're really
even when they have Bungie telling them no, this will not work. On related news, Jim Ryan's announced he's leaving PlayStation. Good fucking riddance. Maybe you can stop his fucking obsessive idea with live services.
No,
Yeah,
sorry, I was gonna say, like, Destiny, yeah, really none of those games lasted because Halo Infinite was supposed to be, like, the big rival to it. I was confused because I was thinking of, like, Fortnite rivals, because there were at least 6 of them at one point, and Overwatch.
Yeah, like, the Fortnite rivals have mostly, you know, like, what was it called? The people who made Titanfall, they made, like,
you
like,
are thinking the exact same thing I was, and
Apex Legends.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that had a good run until they pissed the player base off.
Did
like,
it?
You know,
So that's
think
the thing.
That's still going fairly healthily though.
That's the thing.
It's going,
Here's
it's going all right.
Here's the weird thing about these big like live service games is like they'll become enormous, and they'll end up with like a self-sustained ecosystem of people that are into that game. So I don't know what's going on at all in Apex Legends. I just know it exists. It's happening. It bubbled off from mainstream video game discourse, and then it floated off, and now it's in some other reality, and I don't know what's going on with it. And that's just kind of like the natural evolution of games. I don't know what's going on with Overwatch 2 anymore. Overwatch 2 kind of...
Warzone.
That's okay, 'cause Blizzard doesn't know what's going on with Overwatch 2 either.
There's that robot game, Infamous, whatever it was. What the heck was that one called?
It's not Infamous. No,
I don't
it's,
know.
I know what you're talking. I know what you're talking
interviewed
about.
the devs for this video.
Do you mean Roblox?
No. I interviewed the devs for this game back like 2015, and I had no idea what this game was, and apparently it was just enormous. Immortals something? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, you're on about Immortals. But yeah, I just
that's
don't
not right
see.
either. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just like that's the example. Like a game becomes that big. Like PUBG. When's the last time you heard about PUBG? Anything about it?
Oh god, I forgot. I completely forgot about it until you brought it up.
You almost only ever hear that one in the context of China these days. Like it's still huge in China for some reason.
But it's like but like speaking of Fortnite, I mean Epic went and laid off 900 people yesterday, which is nuts.
Yeah, it's like I was surprised there was that many people working for the company already. That was only 15% of the workforce.
Yeah, that's
like
16% of the company. Like what the
right.
hell?
So
right,
like,
it's like what the fuck? How are you hiring that many people?
That leads me back to our whole discussion about sales. Is like you don't know, you can't possibly know how well any of these games are doing. So maybe like Ever Crisis had a great launch, and maybe it's already dead on arrival. Who knows? Or it's going to continue lasting quietly for years and years, and much like Union Cross, we're going to have to go check in every so often to see the newest events in the story of young Riku, who is Sephiroth now.
Yeah, because this is a Nomura backed gacha, there's always a chance that it'll just continue to exist out of sheer force of his will, because I'm pretty sure towards the end Union Cross was doing really badly.
Oh yeah, and they never actually did they ever finish that Dark Road thing, or like they cut the brakes on that really fast, because it seemed like that was going to last forever.
Yeah, like it took them like a year after the game shut down, but then they put the entirety of Dark Road up.
Yeah, that was them basically cutting the brakes. Like, we have to have the story we planned out here. We have to do it because of the franchise, but otherwise, like, we don't want to actually make this game anymore.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure by hell or high water, the story stuff introduced in Ever Crisis will be finished. In what form it'll take, we don't know. Although it's probably got a better chance of surviving, because, Union Cross, like, not only was it doing badly, like, they couldn't really put any more resources onto it, because, like, cutscenes and stuff were still programmed in Flash.
Oh my god. That game was continuing.
Like, that is actually a thing. In one of the Union Cross anniversary letters that Nomura would do, at one point it's like, and also, like, if you have skills in Flash, we'd like you to send in a job application.
Let's go get the guy behind that game was still running in like 2020. In 2021, I think it was. Let's go and get Homestuck. Let's get the Homestuck writer. He'll go and finish the game for us. He was good at Flash. Oh man. So I think this is probably the last time we're gonna have an in-depth discussion of Ever Crisis. Doesn't seem like any of us like it. I've already actually deleted it off my phone. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Same.
it's like it's going to be one of those where like either there'll be some massive update to it, and then in the future, like, you know, we'll be talking about it as like, oh, okay, no, it turned out it was one of the good ones. You know, either that will happen, or more than likely, you know, we'll tune in whenever there's some big revelation from the story. I don't know how often that will be, but otherwise forget about it. You know, it could go one of two ways at this point. The only good thing I'll say about it is that I do actually really like the music rearrangements.
I'll have to check those out then.
Those are good.
I might be willing to play like an offline complete version of Ever Crisis. I would not continue to play this.
Well, here's the thing, like, Near Reincarnation was mostly tuned well enough that you didn't need to go and play the slot machines. Like, it was painfully easy. I was able to get like 15 chapters in that game. The only problem was it was so boring, and the plot did not move. You'd play like 3 hours and you'd learn nothing at all. It was crushing. That's the real, like, damning thing about this kind of video game for me. It's made for people who would rather trade their time for money, and at this point, I have more money than time, and I'd be willing to pay somebody like, here's $60, just fucking get me to the game part of this game, so I don't have to do all this other shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, that's called being 30 in your 30s. That's the sad tragedy of being an adult. You can play any game you want, you just don't really have time for it, and you're too busy doing other things.
Yeah.
But
like, for Ever Crisis, if we're talking about balance, I don't think the slot machine is strictly necessary, but not using it would severely limit your options, because it is kind of just like Remake in that weapons have a special ability tied to them.
SomeColorMage, you squashed all over my transition. I wanted to get off of this topic.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it, but I think you'd have even worse of a time.
Can we talk about something we all, or at least I'm extremely fucking excited about?
Yes. The butt. Because we're not ending this episode on a down note, all right? No more downers. Frowns upside down. Go and write your frowny emoji the other way. Flip it, and then reverse the smile. Because if you just flip it, it's just an upside down frowny face.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, so that's a bad metaphor. So Final Fantasy VII Part 2. Well, it doesn't actually say Part 2, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We got the trailer at TGS. This is a heck of a TGS, by the way, because we get 7 Rebirth. We got Yakuza 9, or whatever they're calling it now.
8.
Yeah, sure.
Well, the official name, Like a Dragon, Infinite Well.
Yes, and there was some other stuff that I'm forgetting about. But this is like a big TGS. Like, I can't remember a TGS this big in some time. Kingdom Hearts 4. You could go and flip the frown right side up again, please. And then flip it the other way, because we're talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We got the new trailer. We have a release date. It's out February 29th, which means that it will take 4 years for it to age 1 year, as we know, if you're born on the 29th. Yeah, you know. That
was good.
So we're going to have playable Cloud and Red 13, and for some sick reason, Kate Sith is here again. And Midgar Zolom. Ah! Remember that joke?
It's a shame we don't have Catuse, because I think he's the only one who likes her Catshi. Or Kate She, or however the fuck you're supposed to pronounce it. We're gonna find out how to pronounce it once and for all.
We do know it's Kate She. I think it's like officially it's. I think they might say his name and maybe Dirge Cerberus or something.
Oh, okay. Oh, of course, that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, I'm just gonna say, like, the stuff they've revealed for this is fucking amazing. All they had to do with how good of a combat system they had in 7 Remake. All they had to do was basically just do that again, add the material that you find later in the original 7. Like, basically just do effectively the same thing with a couple tweaks to make the aerial combat better. And they have done that. They have made the aerial combat shit ton better. But no, instead, like, we have this new fucking synergy system, which is so much bigger than it was in Intermission. Like, in Intermission, it was, like, bare bones compared to what they've shown off for how it is in 7 Rebirth. Like, you know, all you were able to do was basically, as Yuffie, you could synergize with Sonnen, and then you get a few, like, it's literally, like, only 2 or 3, like, special attacks with it. And then plus,
well,
like...
there's special attacks, but in Integrators also, like, you'd start, like, pairing up your actions, so, like, you'd actually... like force the AI to attack when you attack and stuff like that. I don't think that's the case in Rebirth, but they've vastly expanded like the actual team up abilities and such.
Yeah, and like, you know, they've made a whole ass mechanic around these special abilities. So how it works is, as you use your ATB abilities, you have like some little slots that fill up, right? And then based on how many slots that fill up, you can use that character's pair attack or whatever it's called. I think it's just called a synergy ability.
Synergy. Yeah,
that's the one.
Ability.
You can use the synergy ability, and they all, like, each pair has their own unique synergy ability, right? That takes advantage of both of their mechanics, and then you get to, like, you know, based on what the ability was, you get to have like certain extra effects applied to it. So I think like if you use Tifa and Aerith's, then like Aerith will make the enemy weaker or something to like more vulnerable to Tifa's attacks. And then like if you use, go on.
So like they've been like going over like the newer playable characters, so like nothing about Aerith and Tifa yet, but they have been talking about this stuff. So like if you do a synergy with Red, they'll like boost the limit break gauges. If you use the one in the tutorial, which is the Cloud Sephiroth Nibelheim flashback, the synergy attack there gives Sephiroth unlimited MP.
Yeah, stuff like that. That's what I meant. Yeah.
7 Remake had MP.
It boosts
in
your
it?
characters.
I don't even remember.
Yes,
Of course it did.
had MP.
Yeah, I don't. You know, it's only been like 4 years, and I've completely forgotten.
It's been 3 years, but
yeah, you know, whatever. Time passes.
Yeah, you're right. Like it's stuff that like boosts your character as opposed to like weakens them for the most part. But yeah, like, you know, there's that stuff going on, and it just makes combat so much more interesting. And there's also another thing where based on which characters you have, you get some other special move. So for example, Aerith, when you're with her, she has a move called Bodyguard, which means
that's the synergy skill, which
that's the synergy skill. That's the one.
Which you can pull off while blocking, and also they're completely free. So like,
so what it means is
cost, no synergy gauge cost. It's just like you block, you can press button to do things.
So what it means is that on top of how differently the characters already play, you know, there's genuine strategy behind choosing what your party is going to be based on those synergy skills, right? You know, so it's not just how their unique playstyle is. You know, you might have a boss where you're like, oh shit, I really need the Bodyguard ability, so I have to bring Aerith along for this. Or you're like, oh shit, you know, I have to use limit breaks here, so I really need Tifa along to fill the limit gauge faster, right? You know, there's actual reason to choose who you're going to put in your party that isn't just, oh, which do I like more? Because in 7 Original, that's all it really comes down to, you know. It's like, which of these is my favorite character? They're going in the party. That's all that really matters. And this one, I'm sure, like, you could still say, like, hey, this is my favorite group of people, so I'm going to make a party around them, and I'm going to strategize around them. But you get to, like, actually mix it up with different like, play styles based on that. And I think that's just such an interesting way of doing it. Because if I'm honest, like, I thought they were just going to do Final Fantasy X. Like, I thought they were just going to do the thing where it's like you have your 3, and then you could swap in other people. And, you know, that wouldn't have really worked all that well because, you know, materia system, it's hard enough fitting out material for 3 people. Imagine if you had to do it for 7. That would be insane. But instead they're making it so that you're switching it up, but they like give you reasons like to encourage you to switch it up. And all these different combinations are just going to be so much fun to play around with. Like, I mean, it's insane to me that like they could have so easily just stopped at what they did with 7 Remake, and instead they're like, no, we're gonna add all this extra shit and we're just gonna make it better.
Yeah, so we do see a lot of open environments. Have they confirmed how large this world is actually going to be in any way?
The exact size, no, but they have mentioned that it includes all 3 of the main continents of the planet.
Yeah, it's gonna be fuck huge.
So
gonna be.
So at that point, that means we would estimate that this is going to end in the Forgotten Capital then?
That's what they've said.
Oh, they've actually explicitly said that?
They've said
well,
that.
They've said it in a way that can be fairly weasel-worthy, but like the locations in the game go up to the Forgotten Capital.
All right.
Yeah, so like what they've said is that, you know, they're not following the exact 100% original story of FF7, so the events are going to be out of order. Although even on that point, they said
the exact example they gave is that the Wutai side quest does not happen until part 3.
Yeah, and then they showed a screenshot. They showed a screenshot of a place that looks very much like Wutai, except it has someone who looks suspiciously like Gilgamesh in it. You know, they didn't show us that many frames of it, but you know, so it's super interesting.
One thing that's really interesting for me is just looking at this Square Enix blog with the character role, is that we do not have Sid here, who should have joined the party in the original 7 at this point. Vincent shows up in the trailer, but he's not listed as a major character, which leads me to suspect...
Vincent is confirmed to not be a fully controllable party member. He's the same case as Red in Remake.
Okay, Watson, I was doing a deduction here, and you've... Alright, that's fine. It's fine,
I'm going to guess that it is the same case for Sid, because, like... I mean, Sid. I mean, they can't like completely skip Sid. Like Dave said,
they probably could.
Oh
actually.
yeah, you will have the You'll have the transport method to go to the other continents. If you played the original, you know what that is. So like, yeah, that means you get the tiny Bronco, and kind of hard to have that and not have Sid.
Yeah,
I could imagine they could come up with any way you can get across. It could just be a ferry or something if they really are cutting for time. Most interesting for me is that Zack is listed in the major characters here. So that pretty much 100% confirms that he will be playable in some way during this game. I don't think he's going to join the main party, though Zack is the wild card right now in this entire story. We really don't know what world he's in and whether or not he's just going to jump in and screw things up or whatever.
You see like a screenshot of him where he's in Midgar with the Comatose Cloud, and Kyrie helps him out, and that's all we've seen.
And like, it's not just Zack that's a wild card there. Like, I get the feeling, looking at the stuff about Sephiroth in the tutorial, this guy feels way too fleshed out to just be someone who's around in the tutorial. I think he might be playable in some form later in the game.
Spoiler alert, he's in the Shinra Reality Simulator. You get to play him again then, and that's the only time he shows up. Or he shows up in the fucking...
That'd be such a dick punch, but yeah, I could see it.
Mean, it'd be a dick move, but I'd still accept that, because, like, I mean, he does also sound like he's fun to play around with, so, like, you know, even if we just VR mission as him...
And he's in the... I imagine like the reality simulator is something that they might put in Gold Saucer. Speaking of which, as far as events,
it better be somewhere, because that makes it so much easier to do the summon videos.
Wait. I have a theory. All right. So if you remember Final Fantasy IX, your opening crew of
I don't remember that game. I've never played it before.
All right,
Never
well,
heard
I was gonna explain my theory anyway. So if you recall, or don't recall,
We're fucking with you, I love that game.
the opening crew of thieves that you get, there's like 3 of them. There's Blank, and there's Cinna, and there's some other guy. Those characters are actually character slots of major party members that'll show up later. One, I think, becomes Quina. One becomes Freya. One becomes somebody else. So
And there's a bug that's attached to it. It's funny.
yes. So
Yeah, like 6 does the same thing. It has like the same bug because like there's the opening part where with the Moogle, so like pretty much every single character slot has a Moogle in it before it's
Yep.
replaced with the actual player character.
yeah, so Kate Sith is going to play exactly the same as Sephiroth. That's how you're going to use all the work you put in as your character. You develop this character,
No.
you have a combat system for him, it's way too developed, so then you just flip it over, Kate Sith is Sephiroth.
No, so there's a synergy skill that you have with Sephiroth and Cloud, and it's called like Void Scent or some shit that like empowers his Buster Sword, and he does this super strong attack, right? And that is already, they gave that to Aerith and Cloud, so you can already reuse that one. But
dang. They're
as for
the love triangle has text in the actual gameplay now.
Rip.
So, like another thing that we've mentioned in the gameplay, but not really gone into much detail on, the materia system. Like the core is the same, but there's a hell of a lot more interesting materia around. Like
Just like
Chadley is still around, and he's coming up with even more types of materia, like magic materia that fuses 2 of the materia from the previous game together. Like you
lightning
can have a
and
fire
wind.
blizzard materia on the same slot, or lightning and wind. Yeah, there's
It's
also
like, what
like
the
a lot
fuck?
of materia that serve similar purpose to the timely accessories from 16. Like you just slot them in, and that character will just do certain things automatically on AI.
And then Deadly Dodge is no longer a materia. They now made that
Deadly
a
Dodge is
proper
no longer a
ability.
materia. That's now your standard dodge.
Love that
Oh,
shit.
nice.
Amazing.
Let me ask about my favorite materia of all time, enemy skill materia. Is that in this game? Or do we not?
There's no
haven't
way it's
seen
not
it,
in that
but-
game. There's no way it's not.
Like there's no way it's not. Yeah.
Okay.
Like if the
it-
Midgard's Golem is in this game,
Ah,
you gotta fucking be able to enemy skill it.
Fucking like it was in 7 Remake. It was extremely limited. So I don't see why they wouldn't bring it back. I just hope they actually don't limit it this time. Like I hope there's much more stuff we can do with it. But
I
yeah,
want
I mean,
Big Guard,
it's
man. That's what Final Fantasy VII for me is. It's casting Big Guard in every
Yep.
fight, every single time. There's no reason not to use it.
you cast Big God, and it includes fucking haste, right? You know, 7 Remake,
I don't
7
remember
Remake,
anymore now.
you get
I
yeah,
think-
it includes haste, protect, and shell,
Okay,
or
alright, thank you.
in 7's case, barrier and M barrier. It's insane.
I couldn't
but
remember
then
if that was
in-
that or Final Fantasy V, because that is more.
No, Final Fantasy V is just protect and shell. Like 7 original is the only game
Why don't
where
I
it
go
also
to-
includes haste.
Why don't I go to Final Fantasy VII, FinalFantasyWiki.com, let's say.
That's not what the URL is.
You
but
know
alright.
what I mean.
I know what you mean.
All right, in Final Fantasy V, it casts Protect, Shell, and Float.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. It doesn't cast haste. Yeah. But in 7 Remake, you have this strategy where like you put the time materia with the magnify materia, which is the all materia, and then you can cast haste on everyone, and you can cast slow on all the enemies, and it's pretty sweet.
You are
and that would be
correct.
that would be completely redundant in 7 the original, because you can already cast haste on everyone, and slow barely works on anyone in the original.
Yeah,
And like
you are-
you know, in 7 Remake, like stop, you can use stop on fucking Reno and some of the bosses, and it's quite hilarious. And that barely works in 7 original.
You are correct, Techno. It does cast Protect, Shell, and Haste.
Yep. Sweet. But yeah, I mean like it's just so that's the core gameplay. That's as far as the combat's concerned. Chocobos are in this. Oh, sorry.
just
Did you have
want
something
to-
else to say?
One more thing, because like I am looking through the blog post now, and like I am interested in how they're saying that Red 13's gameplay style is, because like his thing is that he has like a meter that fills as he blocks attacks.
Yeah,
And,
he's more
like,
defensive.
As it fills, you can press triangle to go into like this high speed attack mode where he can also steal HP from enemies.
He can also ride chocobos. We've seen this.
Yeah, so you can also ride chocobos.
Yeah, I'm glad to see it. I'm happy for him.
One of Nomura's most undefeated moments, where like the devs were trying to figure out how to get Red in the chocobo, and Nomura said like just have him sit like everyone else. So, so
He's
It's
so
pretty
does.
sweet.
He's so hunched over, I'm worried about his back. But he's also a dog, so I guess back problems are less of a thing for him.
It's like, that's as far as like the core gameplay is concerned. There's probably other stuff we might have missed that's super, like, there's just so much that came out from this. But you can ride chocobos, right? And there's this whole like mechanic around like how you catch them, which they've been over, and it's funny. It's similar, like it reminded me a little bit of Horizon Zero Dawn, actually, the way you capture the chocobos, because you're like sneaking around them, and then you like sneak up on them and you catch them that way, and you still have to feed them the greens, and then you get to customize your chocobo. So there's a bit of Red Dead Redemption in there as well. You get to like give your chocobo outfits and whatever, and it's already confirmed that the different chocobo colors are still the same thing. Like the green ones, presumably they can go over mountains. The blue ones presumably can go over water, and there's all that. And I think the black chocobo can fly. But like there's so
Gold
much
chocobo
stuff
can
that
fly.
the gold chocobo presumably exists in
fly.
this game as well. We haven't seen the gold chocobo yet. But there's just so much stuff like that they haven't that they haven't shown yet, but there's so much that they have, and it's just like the chocobos look exciting as all fuck, and presumably we can race them, because chocobo racing looks really fun. If it's anything like chocobo racing in the Final Fantasy XIV Gold Saucer, I'm already happy, right? And speaking of Gold Saucer, we have the robot battles, except it's with the pixelated models, and it's not a piece of shit this time, presumably. Hope so. There's motorcycle racing is back.
Not pixelated, low poly.
Yeah, low
they're
poly,
Final
that's the one.
They're PlayStation 1 models.
Yeah, the Lego Mandem.
It should be noted that in the original Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation 1, this particular minigame was completely unplayable. It
was
did not.
dog shit.
It actively did not work. You could not win like the third round, no matter what you did.
Yeah, like even if you got to the round where it's programmed that you're guaranteed to lose, like it's kind of shit house getting there in the first place.
Yeah, it's not a
Moogle
good
House-
video game either.
The Moogle House is in it, except in this version, it's a real thing, as opposed to just a Gold Saucer minigame, right? That's pretty sweet too.
Is it? It's in physical place.
Yeah.
Moogles are real now.
Yeah.
Moogles are real.
Oh, all right. I kind of liked that in Final Fantasy VII Land, Moogles are just a fictional creature.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of interesting too. But
I forget the exact details, but like one of the videos showed like you play a mini game where they first shit at you, so like they're just realizing that the truth that the most popular Moogles around are the ones that are complete assholes.
Oh, here's an important Chocobo question. Does the Chocobo theme appear when you ride a Chocobo? Because there are certain other games, like I mentioned, that were complete cowards and did not have the Chocobo theme playing.
Oh, it's definitely gonna appear.
It
Okay.
was there.
All right, good. So
Yeah.
not all video games are complete cowards and made by cowards.
No.
For cowards.
Yeah, so there's that. They also introduced, like, it was a weird one. They added a card game in it that's not Triple Triad and is not the dog shit one from FF9, the Tetramaster, right? They added a card game to it, which wasn't in before, and I kind of thought that was a weird choice because, when they put Fort Condor in 7 Remake Intergrade, like, I always thought, like, Fort Condor was now going to be the FF7 version of Triple Triad, right? And maybe it still is, I don't know. But, you know, now they're also saying on top of that, oh, Fort Condor actually exists as a location. We haven't seen it yet, but apparently they mentioned that it does exist, and it was the place of a Mako reactor or whatever. So that's a thing now. And yeah, so I think the CPR minigame sounds like that's going to be back, except you give CPR to Yuffie this time.
No, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do the stupid dolphin jump thing either.
The dolphin is back.
I don't want to do
And we
it.
didn't see if the dolphin jump specifically was there, but the dolphin is definitely there, and a major part of the cutscenes in the boss battle down there.
Yep,
Okay,
the dolphin is there, except this time that's how you meet Yuffie in this version.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I still want to do the marching minigame. That's actually fun.
That's in there.
All right, good.
That's in there.
All right,
Yep.
the other mini games you can cut, especially the dolphin one, because that sucked.
Yep. Yeah, so that's cool. But yeah, I mean, like this game just like there's just so much stuff that they've shown off, and it just looks fucking beautiful, right? And it's just amazing to me because they didn't have to do this shit. Like they didn't have to do a lot of the stuff they've added in, right? And we're getting it anyway. It's like I feel like we as Final Fantasy VII fans, we do not deserve this game. Like you know,
yeah, you
we've
can
been.
definitely-
Speak
Like,
for
you can
yourself. What did you
definitely
do
tell
that you don't
even-
deserve it?
We're a toxic fan base, man. We're horrible. Like we don't deserve this shit.
we're great.
Like-
Especially me. I'm fantastic.
like you can tell that even with like the large amounts of asset reuse they can get away with, because you know this is a direct sequel to another really good looking game that yeah, they really put 4 years worth of work into this. This is
Yeah.
this
It's
is so
insane.
much bigger than I think anyone could have ever expected.
It's funny that asset reuse, like, you know, because you see, like, some of the posters and stuff in the background that were in the original, and they were in Midgar, and now they're just on the background of, like, random places, like, they're on the back of bus
Look,
stops, whatever.
asset
Like,
reuse is an unambiguously good thing as long as it still fits the thing that you're taking it to. So, like,
oh, absolutely.
yeah,
100%.
yeah, like I'm not saying asset reuse like a bad thing, but it's also like, you know, I had thought that this would have been out faster because they would have made another game like Remake, and no, they've kind of made like their own version of a Xenoblade. It feels like.
Yeah, it is like, you know, I've always wanted Final Fantasy to do this. Not just 7. I've always wanted Final Fantasy to just take a system, run with it, and perfect it in the next game, right? You know, because this has been, like, I feel like the biggest flaw of the Final Fantasy series is also arguably its biggest strength, where that is, they have this notion that every game they have to reinvent the wheel. They have to do something completely different this time. So, you know, Final Fantasy VI, it introduces the Magicite system. You know, a cool system. We could maybe work out the kinks and make something better. Nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to throw it out. We're going to do Materia. Materia system, amazing, genius, fucking incredible. And we're not going to use it ever again. We're going to go to the Junction system, which is interesting, but imperfect. You know, some people found a way to break the game, and some people didn't understand it. You know, so are we going to fix it for the next one?
Some people didn't understand it
entirely
and
true.
broke the game. So
it's entirely true. But we're not ever going to use it again because we're going to throw it out. And it feels like they went even more extreme when since 12 onwards, where they said, oh, not only are we going to redo that whole character growth mechanics, we're now also going to completely do a new combat system every game, which I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with that idea. You know, you had a long run of using the ATB system. Like, I don't mind you going up to a more action-based system. I just wish you'd choose one and stick with it, right? Because they have reinvented the wheel each time, because you're never going to get everything 100% right and perfect the first time you do it. You have to iterate on it and improve on it over time, right? And what I love about this is they're finally doing that. They're finally saying, you know, we have a system. This is going to be our system. And we're going to iterate on it. We're going to improve on it. And the next one is going to be an actual sequel and not just a completely new game. You know, like Spider-Man is another great example of this, Marvel Spider-Man, where Spider-Man 1, I felt like there was so much they did in that game that I almost just couldn't see, I couldn't perceive even of what they could possibly add. And then in the sequel, they've added a shit ton of stuff to it, and it feels massively different. And I was like, oh my god, they managed to make it like so much better than the first one. You know, Uncharted, same way. You know, I thought after Uncharted 2 there was nothing else they could possibly do with that, and no, it turns out in Uncharted 4 they like completely revolutionized it. You know, and Final Fantasy is finally getting to do that, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, I think this is a great trailer. I'm excited to look at it. I'm excited to play this game. I'm happy that we have something to talk about that isn't Final Fantasy 16. The pipeline of content continues. I will give my judgment when the game comes, because at this point I am forced to be cautiously optimistic with every single new release. I think I've largely turned around on 7 Remake, which I was kind of cool on originally, but I'm much higher on now, looking back. Possibly because after 3 years I've forgotten all the parts that I thought were kind of dull and padding.
Yeah, that's definitely, like, that's part of it. But I, like, you know, I've noticed that too, where, like, I feel like, you know, a lot of people, where their opinion on 7 Remake seems to have only like improved over time, which is the opposite trend from, for example, Final Fantasy 15, where that doesn't seem to have happened. We'll see what happens with 16, but definitely, like, I'm sensing a lot of that too.
And I am actually very hopeful for that 16 DLC, because I think a more focused version of that game, possibly with more mechanics than are there, that's kind of too basic, it's too plain for what it is, could be very exciting. So there's a lot of good things coming up on the pipeline, and we will talk about it here on this podcast. SomeColorMage, do you have some concluding thoughts?
There's also one other thing that I noted, that they're going really aggressive on trying to get people who you know may be interested in Rebirth but haven't played Remake yet. Like, not only is Rebirth, they've said that they're doing like the same thing they had in Kingdom Hearts 3, where they had like this video recap of the story so far, including the thing. They've got this digital twin pack, where like if you can buy Rebirth and you also like when you buy it you immediately get Remake Integrate. Until Rebirth is released, that is the exact same price as getting Rebirth standalone. So now you can pre-order Rebirth and get Remake Integrate for free.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I love that.
I got screwed on that deal. I should have not played those games for 3 years.
Yeah, so it does mean that imagine, like, we're never gonna get the proper sales figures of the games individually. Like, you know, when we get to the third part, they're gonna say the Final Fantasy VII Remake Project Series sold in total a bazillion copies. We're not gonna get, like, you know, Remake did this numbers and Rebirth did this numbers and whatever the fuck comes next did this numbers. But yeah, I mean, I love that they did that.
Maybe don't play Rebirth at all, because they might give away that game for free too in 4 years.
See, the video game, especially like single player games, like basically the business model at this point is FOMO. Like, because we know every game when it comes out, like sometime after that, it's going to be massively reduced in price. So that's how they're able to make most of their money, through FOMO. And this is, you know, if you want to experience it now, then you'll have to pay a premium for it. If you want to experience it later, then you'll have to wait and avoid spoilers for years. It's up to you.
Okay. So I think that's everything, right?
I believe so. I think we're all very excited for this game, and it's a great time to be a Final Fantasy fan.
It is a great time to be a Final Fantasy fan. It's a great time to be alive, really. I mean, you know,
it really is.
Despite capitalism and COVID and other stuff, you know, yeah, whatever.
It's a great time to play games, not so great a time to make them.
Yes, it is a better
Yeah.
time to play
Yeah.
games than to make games. It is a terrible time to make video games.
But it's a great time to be in a union, so we'll see what happens with video game unions.
Yes.
I support you all 100% of the way.
It's a great time to write a Final Fantasy Wiki Final Fantasy Wiki, and then make a podcast about said wiki, and then travel around the world to go see friends from that wiki, or only travel to Manhattan and have lunch with friends from that wiki in certain cases.
Hey.
Hey, yeah. So, we're going to conclude there. Just one small bit of self-promotion before we move on. Next month is Spooky Month. Like, literally tomorrow will be Spooky Month. So,
Yeah.
on BlueHighwindBlogspot.com, I'll be doing 31 days of horror reviews like I do every single year. So there'll be a new review of a new horror movie. Well, not necessarily new, but a horror movie every day for 31 days. This month's topic, or this year's topic, is demons and devils. So we're going to do The Exorcist. We're going to do Huxan. We're going to do the D-Book. We're going to do Exorcist Believer. And Rosemary's Baby, and some other movies. So come by. It'll be a time. As for this podcast, yes, SomeColorMage.
Well, if we're allowed to talk about wiki self-promotion stuff,
Yeah.
So later this month is Final Fantasy XIV European Fan Fest, so we will certainly be doing the stream for the opening of that, where we will get the answer to the question, what the fuck did Yoshida's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles shirt mean?
Ooh, spicy.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Okay. Techno, do you have anything to promote?
Nope, because I'm too busy on the Spider-Man wiki.
Okay.
So,
well,
not yet.
Spider-Man 2 PlayStation 5 coming out like in a week or something, right?
Like 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, so come by the Spider-Man wiki and then you'll learn things about Spider-Man.
A lot of things. I'm very proud of the work we're doing there.
He shoots webs out of his wrist and has spiders.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does. He
Only the Sam Raimi Spider-Man shoots webs out of his wrist. The rest of them have a robot that does it. Not
yeah, that doesn't
robot,
doesn't make any sense. That's really stupid.
A fucking web shooter thingy. You know what I mean?
He has superpowers except for when he doesn't have superpowers. It's stupid. The Raimi explanation makes much more sense. Anyway, this is the official podcast of the Final Fantasy Wiki. I'm your host, BlueHighwind. I direct and produce, and I'm the best boy of this podcast. The podcast music is La Montana de los Jovenes Caballeros from the from XPRTNovice off the OC Balance of Ruins soundtrack. Thank you for letting us use your music. We'll be back in October to talk about something. I'm not entirely sure what, but something will show up and we'll talk about it. In the meantime, happy Halloween, right? Yeah.
It's not yet Halloween, but happy whatever you're celebrating.
Happy Sukkot.
I mean, the next episode, you know, a large chunk of the planet will only be able to access it after Halloween. So
yeah, literally, happy Sukkot. This episode will drop on Sukkot. So happy that. Have a good day. Bye. I'm going to sleep.
It's like so much stuff with it has been announced that I get the feeling one of us will forget something.
Yeah,
Like-
but I need a refresher because I never actually watched it like properly.
Okay. No, definitely watch it now.
Yeah,
World's ending. At least that's what everyone's saying.
that sounds bad.
The sky,
Sounds fine.
I don't like it.
Ready to fire, sir. Welcome to the New World Order.
He looks weird. Rufus looks weird. I don't know why. All right, there's the parade thing.
Listen, tell me you can't hear that. Her rallying cry.
There's Tifa still doing her combos.
And everything on it dies.
We can overcome
Red 13, he's now in this.
Am I the same as
Yep.
this monster?
And someone else is in this too.
Well, Sephiroth.
Human?
Well, him too, but someone else.
Yeah.
Think you can find him?
Yeah, I had clouds in it.
Oh no! You had that timed very well, actually. Oh man, playable Kate She. Why do we want this?
However you pronounce it.
Yeah. Oh, there's the memes of everyone on the bicycles. What are those things called?
Segway.
Segways, yeah. I don't think Sephiroth's voice actor's very good. It's okay.
He's growing on me.
Oh my god, that was Midgarzolam. Ah! There you go. What's it?
Yep.
That's a running gag from like 20 years ago.
I remember that.
Yeah. Oh my god! there's the Sephiroth great hair shot. I forgot about that one.
Yep. The fucking L'Oreal advert.
Yep. Kujata. That's a thing to remember. I guess we're gonna get another dance scene. That's good. Chocobo racing. Oh, the terrible Rock'em Sock'em Robots minigame is back, but hopefully actually works this time. That game was actively unplayable in the original version.
No, but it's better because they used the fucking pixel.
That describes a lot of Seven's minigames.
Yeah, but I think that
one...
I think that one was the most broken of all of them because it was like completely impossible after the third round. Like people like went in and checked the code and it's actually programmed for you to lose or something along those lines.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. All those minigames were bad except for Chocobo Racing.
Yep.
And that was the only... Alright, February 29th, 2024. Okay. Alright, so that's everything. There was a lot of stuff, actually, at TGS this year. Surprisingly beefy.